Hi there! It's weekend again and it's ICP time. Let's take a look at ICP through the Wyckoff lens and see where it is at and where it's going. I know it's another crazy week, but let's dive into the charts. If you're new to my sessions, these are the three key topics that I'll cover during the session. So let's start with the weekly chart. Here, previously we discussed whether ICP is going through the A scenario, which is the blue one, that is heading towards the new distribution cycle that may challenge the previous level, above the purple key level of $12.72. Or is it the yellow scenario, which means a rather disappointing distribution that quickly died down. So something similar to what happened in early 2023. Okay, so last week there was still some hope, but when we get to the daily chart, I'll show you why. But this week, especially with this selling from the orange key level, look at this long wick from above. Okay, basically, it's like a big hand squeezing the price downwards. That kind of confirmed that this looks like the 2023 year begin scenario, and it's even quicker than that. That one lasted from the climb to the decline. That was about 133 days, almost 4 months, and we're only in a month's time, and it already returned. But a cycle is a cycle. It matches the wrong time. I would say, even though it's a failed launch, it's still fine if it's going to come back, right? Even SpaceX, failed a couple of times before they, made wonder. So let's take out the blue scenario for the moment, because it looks to me it's time to declare that the yellow scenario happened. So if this is an automatic reaction, or worse, if there's just straight back to selling climax, then what's next, right? If that's the case, then we have to park it somewhere with these two preliminary support and the selling climax. So they, in the weekly chart, it's still unclear whether they have it's back. Alright, so here we're still waiting for the next few candlesticks to show up and let us know whether the distribution has completely stopped, okay, has reached or re-entered the accumulation. That's the thing that the weekly chart needs time to develop. But if we look at the daily chart, here's what's going on. Last week, I shared this upward channel that's been adjusted. So initially the climb was very steep, right? And then after a week, we adjusted to see whether the uptrend is still going on. But last week we adjusted towards along the sign of weakness level. And the past few days, the past 4 days, including today, just confirmed that this may not be an uptrend anymore. So even if we put in this, just for the argument's sake, let's say there's still 10% chance for this to come back, okay? Because the volume is indeed dying down. So I would say, half of it is because we are going through the weekend. Usually Saturday and Sunday are a little bit more quiet. Not all the time, but most of the times. I hope this declining of volume, meaning the price is stabilizing at this point, and it's understandable because it was the accumulation period previously. So it shouldn't be too crazy, especially it's going back to near the spring zone. So I hope this continues with sideways trading, meaning staying above this white line of $3.6. Alright, best if it exhibits a behavior that travels back to the north along this box. Okay, so it looks a bit wild that it dropped so low. Just to add one more LPSY over here, if I change it to a line chart, you see the other mini peak over there. So it looks a bit wild that it dropped so low and then reclimbed quickly. Sometimes it can happen, not very often. So I'm not going to remove these tags, even though, let's say, they still have a 10% chance. Alright, so second test around green key level of 8.66, and then even better if it goes to the upthrust for 9.92. Very low chance given the trend, but because of declining volume, it may be stabilizing. And whether or not we call this a selling climax, it all depends on whether it's going to exhibit accumulation behavior in the next few days. Right? It may accumulate below the red key level of 4.52. So bouncing or sideways trading between the white line and the red line. I know there are a lot of lines. I'm talking about these two. So that's a positive scenario that we would like to see. Okay, the best is the one that I mentioned earlier. You know, go back straight up within the box, within that channel box that we have been adjusting or observing over the past couple of weeks. This is still a good sign. Going back to the spring level, meaning this red dashed line, is something that we wouldn't want to see. But if the market continues to go to the south, it's unavoidable for ICP to come back to test this area. Alright, so if we look back to the left hand side, it's not common that, you know, after going up and it comes back to a low point, but it did happen during 2022 and 2023. So in the, hey, Big Mouth, just purchased some food. Hey, so yeah, here that we discussed in the weekly chart, I explained this mini peak over that period. It started somewhere between the red and the white, went up to challenge or went above the yellow key level of 7.2, roughly around that level, and come back to the same level and went even lower. That's where the spring level we have, you know, just a month ago. So we are going through something similar as of this moment. All right, but you know, just that this time the level is lower. The conditions, the macro conditions I'm talking about, is different from 2002, 2003. All right, people are worrying liquidity is kind of like drying up. That's why QT is going. So it may bring back liquidity, and that's when potentially the rebound comes. As of now, you know, let's say before this little distribution that happened, yeah, the BC is here. So it kind of similar to what happened over here. Last time, let's say this was where the spring was, okay? That little thing over here. It went to the peak and came back to the same level, or even lower, a little bit lower. So remember this triangle for a moment. I'll come back to this. This time, we started off here. So it pumped up to a similar level compared to that year, around 9.92. And now we're coming back, not ending at that level yet. I'm just saying, if it repeats what happened over here, it's not a surprise that it ended up at the spring level, meaning this red level over here at around 2.8. Okay? So that's what the daily chart is telling us. While it seems like it's, you know, trying to show us this where the selling climax is for this mini cycle within the daily chart. Going back to the weekly, it's still basically going back to further accumulation. Okay, so I can't remember which session quite a while back. This 2002, 2003 prolonged low range, I would say low range accumulation. There were fluctuations, so we have to catch those as well if you don't want to sit there and wait for 2 years. So when it came to the spring and went to even the disappointing peak, it was still a 140% climb. Likewise for this one that we have gone through, from the spring towards that peak, it was 250%. Alright, so even though the sentiments may not be good, but these kind of quick pump are still opportunities. Alright, so thanks for joining me. I know a lot of you have jumped in. For that, I thank you, and I'm moving on to Doge next. Finger crossed for ICP that it exhibit some kind of horizontal movements and start accumulating next week all the way into December. See you in the next session.